Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Inside the Piranha Club with me, Rebecca Clancy.
And me, Ben Hunt.
And me, Mark Manbrines.
And this is the second of 3 special episodes looking at Cadillac ahead of their first home race in Miami next week. We have already spoken to Nick Chester, the Chief Technical Officer at the team, and Pat Simmons, the Executive Engineering Consultant, who were brilliant talking about what they've been up to in the break, or not a break, as it turns out. Everyone's been very busy and flat out, why they took part in the team in the first place. And I think the common thread between both of them was that it was a phone call from a certain man known as Graeme Lowdon. Ben, you have known Graeme Lowdon a very long time. So you and Mark sat down with him and you had a chat. How was it?
Yeah, really good. I mean, we were due to speak to Graeme up at Silverstone. We went to the factory and had a little bit of a poke around, didn't we? And saw the building work going on and everything. And he was due to be there, but he was called away to the US, which is where the team will be operating out of. And, you know, he needed to be in Indianapolis, so totally understandable. He caught up with us on a video call and brought us all up to speed on what he's been working on. But I thought it was really insightful. As you say, yeah, I've known Graeme for a long time and incredibly hard worker, knows the business inside and out, and works at different areas within Formula One as well, and for different teams. Probably the most ideally suited individual, given his background, to get this project up and running. So I thought his insight was really fascinating.
Okay, well, without further ado, let's hear from Graeme.
Graeme, thanks for joining us on the podcast. We would like to talk to you all things Cadillac as you approach the Miami Grand Prix, team's first home US race. I think, you know, it's quite important for the team. That's no understatement, given how far you've come in such a short space of time. Could you just tell us what it means from your perspective?
Yeah, well, first of all, Ben and Mark, thanks very much for having me and giving me the opportunity to share some of the experience with you. It's super exciting. Rather unbelievably, Miami is only our 4th Grand Prix ever. You know, we've only done 3 up to now, and we're racing against teams. I think in Ferrari's case, have done 1,100 and something. I'm sure if I Googled it, I'd find out. You know, and this is the very highest level. This is the pinnacle of world motorsport, the greatest team game in the world, and we get a chance to take an American team to America and race there. And you know, it's a real privilege, and it's fantastic for me. You know, I've got a kind of front row seat of, you know, seeing how this is developing, seeing the interaction and the reception we're getting from American fans, and you know, just contributing to Formula One's greatest sport in the world.
It's quite. You said you only done 3 races, but I remember Miami Grand Prix last year. That was kind of the brand launch. You hadn't got a car then; you'd only just got the entrant through. Do you ever stop to think about how far you've come in such a short space of time? Because previously Formula One teams have taken ages to get off the ground, whereas I think you had like 9 months to do so.
Yeah, I've actually been really making a conscious decision to try and stop every so often and take some of it in, because it's not something I've really done in the past. You know, as you guys know the sport very, very well. It's relentless. Formula One is absolutely relentless. And it doesn't lend itself to having those moments. But I genuinely think, after having, you know, maybe it's because I'm old now, Ben, but I genuinely think that it's important to do that. And I've been trying to encourage a lot of people in the team to do it. You know, I've told them what they've achieved here in, as you say, a very, very short space of time. We had our 1-year birthday from having the entry announced. Actually in Melbourne. It was like, you know, almost a year to the day. So we were a baby, and it's important to take a little step back and remember it, because what they've achieved, I haven't achieved. It's everyone in the team. What the team have achieved is, I think, is exceptional. You know, I really do. And it's been an awful lot of late nights and all nights and effort and people taking risks. People joining a team before we had an entry, developing race cars, at the very highest level in a tiny, tiny amount of time, and then going up against the very, very best in the world. I take my hat off to everyone in the team. I think they've done a fantastic job. That said, this is sport, and in Formula One, as you well know, nobody's ever happy. They all want to go faster, and they all want more. And we know that we'll get measured not so much on where we start, but on how fast we can develop. And so that's really the focus. How every single day, what can we do to make this team better? And that's really the mentality within the team now.
Graeme, you mentioned, probably slightly tongue-in-cheek, I imagine, about your advancing years, shall we say. So tell us how you ended up being at the helm.
It's real. It's real. I'm 61 I'm 61 on Thursday.
Well, happy birthday for a start.
So I'm not a whippersnapper, but I'm generally hoping for lots and lots and lots more years. I hasten to add. But actually, so sorry, Mark, I forgot the question now. I was going rambling on about getting excited about my birthday.
I was going to say, how does someone at that juncture, if you like, end up being at the helm of another new F1 team joining the grid? And what parts of the challenge, I suppose, appeal to you, given where you are now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess the history of the entry is kind of there for everyone to see, and it actually came on the back of a period of time where the investors were looking to buy another team. They were looking to buy Sauber, and for various different reasons that transaction didn't go ahead, and so they began looking at entering a new team instead, and I guess I was just absolutely in the right place at the right time, because my skill set meant that I'm one of the few people in the world who had that on their CV. I've done it before. I know the process, and so having such a tiny, narrow skill set is not helpful generally. But when somebody does want to start a new team, it's super helpful. So that's kind of how the opportunity came about. It actually began as a consultant, advising on just how do you enter a new team into Formula One. I'd been involved in quite a few of the transactions between other teams. I was heavily involved in the acquisition of Williams, and involved in quite a few of the restructuring of other teams as well. So I guess somewhere there was a kind of there was the go-to guy for anyone looking to buy or sell a Formula One team, and I was super, super lucky, because this really doesn't happen very often. Super lucky that someone was very, very keen and capable in wanting to set up a brand new Formula One team. So that's kind of how it came about. And I remember I got a phone call. I was in the car on the A1 near Newcastle at the time, and I got a phone call, and it was the sort of main investors, and Michael and Mario Andretti as well. And I remember this kind of parting words from Mario, which was, this all sounds great, Graeme, just don't let me down. And when you hear that from 1970, Mario is a legend. You hear that from 1978 world champion. I've got a huge respect for this sport. I love it, but I respect it as well, and I respect these champions. And someone says that to you, you kind of think, oh right, yeah, I better go on and do a good job with this. So, and hopefully I have.
I think you've done a sterling job so far. I mean, the finishes, to finish the race, is even the achievement, and to be, what is it? You've had 5 finishes out of 6 in the first 3 races. So that's a hugely impressive achievement. And before we talk about what's gone on this season, I just wanted to get your take, because I've known you since you was at Mano and Marussia, and the early days on that team. How does this differ to that in the sense of the actual operation? Because we know that you're building this big plant in Fishers, Indiana, which is going to be the home for the team in the future. But the scale of the operation, and also the time constraints that we mentioned at the start as well.
it is huge. It differs an awful lot actually from as I say, Ben, you and I have known each other a long time. When the three new teams came in that 2009 process that went through to 2010, the timescales were even tighter. From signing Concord agreement to being on the grid in Bahrain was 7 months, and at signing a Concord, I think we didn't even have a screwdriver, let alone anything else. So I learned a big lesson that time, and on this project, very early on with the owners, I advised them that we should start building the team even before we get the entry. And indeed, by the time we got the entry in March 2025, we had around about 320 employees already. The owners had the foresight to invest heavily in making that start, and part of that was if you don't do that, I knew how difficult it was, and it's kind of it is actually impossible. You can't do it in the time available, and maybe that's part of the selection trick. But also in doing so, you demonstrate to all the other stakeholders that you're serious. Anyone can say that they're going to start an F1 team. You can download the regs from the internet if you want. Mm-hmm. But if you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars and you're employing people and convincing very, very, very highly rated people to come and join a team, then it sends a strong message to everyone involved. To the other teams, to the fans, to FIA and to FOM, that you're serious about what you're doing. So that was a really big change. And actually, the other thing that changed that I felt hugely was 2009-10. The regulatory framework then changed, like not on an annual basis. It was an hourly basis. I've never experienced anything like it. There was going to be cost caps, and they changed, and then there was going to be different prize money, and then column 3 prize money appeared completely different from anything else, and then there wasn't going to be a cost cap. There's going to be a resource restriction agreement, or RRA, and there was going to be ERS, and then there wasn't going to be ERS, and there's going to be there was just double diffuser stuff, and there was blown diffusers, and there was just every single thing you could think of, and almost weekly regulations were changing. And I have to say it is significantly, there's a lot more stability now, which has allowed us to plan much easier.
Graeme, there's been a lot of talk about your two drivers, and obviously getting those two on board brings that seriousness you spoke about, but also the other two guys from the team we've spoken to for part of this series with Nick and Pat, you knew already. They bring what they bring to their respective roles and things like that. So was reaching out to people like that you'd worked with in the past almost key to building up that early respect, if you like, for the team?
Yeah, I think it was important. So obviously I knew Pat because I'd worked with him before, and I was super excited when he agreed to join the team because I'd been racing with him before, and it was a real honor and pleasure for me actually to go racing with him first time round. And we really admired his approach to things. With Nick, I'd never actually worked with Nick before. Obviously, I knew of him. And I knew his reputation, and I'd been in meetings with him before on just general things that you end up having with other teams, but I'd never worked with him. But I really tried hard to get him on board, and people forget, I think, the leap that it took back then. Nick was one of the very, very first people to join, and there were a couple before him, but not many. And to make that leap when you already have other opportunities and other offers, I'll certainly be eternally grateful to him, because his contribution, like Pat's, has been essential actually to getting the team where it is. And the journey that we've gone down is not like a normal year or 2 years for other teams. It's different because we've moved on from a startup phase, but it was very much a startup. And so, some of the Formula One teams now are huge. They're well over 1,000 people, and they'll have established support structures. finance departments and HR departments, and kind of all the things that contribute towards any sizable business. And certainly in the early days at the team, we didn't have any of that. If you want something to eat, there's no canteen, and so everyone had that mentality to pitch in and build a team. Now the team's matured beyond all recognition since those days, but people like Nick and Pat have not only brought domain expertise. These are people who really understand Formula One incredibly well, but they were able to kind of join the journey as well as we go along, and trying to find that mix of that skill set is not easy. People don't grow on trees, so I'm extremely pleased that both of them agreed to join, and they make our team a significantly better place than it would be without them.
We touched on the early results. We've only had 3 races. We've had this break. Was the break a good thing for you, to allow you a little bit of extra time and just sort of dig into what you've done right and wrong?
Yeah, it's kind of, it's the bit swings and roundabouts. I think I mentioned before, we've done 3 Grand Prix. So if we'd gone to Miami having done 5, then we would have almost twice the data. And so little things like that had a big impact on us. Also, I'm really pleased with the momentum that we created between Melbourne, Shanghai, Suzuka. As you pointed out, Ben, we had 2-car finish in, we slipped up in Melbourne. We only finished with 1 car, but we finished with both in Shanghai and Suzuka, and there was a significant pace increase in both of those as well. And so a lot of that was from just getting into the groove, and then all of a sudden there's a gap. And so we've been working very hard to make sure that when we go to Miami, it doesn't feel like Melbourne all over again. Instead, we're keeping the continuity. So we've been doing some simulations of various things and everything to keep everyone sharp in our in our very young history of Grand Prix. All of that said, it has actually allowed us to bring everything back to the factory, which is really unusual in during the season. And we've got quite a big upgrade package planned for Miami, and it's given us a chance to to kind of fit a lot of that and work on that in a way that we wouldn't normally, because so much now of race car construction is actually done at the track. It's just how Formula One has changed over the years.
You mentioned earlier, Graeme, about the site in the US, and we know you were over there during the break. As a proud northerner in England, might you find yourself living out there soon, or will you try and put that off for as long as you can?
I didn't bump into any Geordies out there, and I didn't check out the kind of local football team to see whether it put us through the ringer in quite the same way as Newcastle. But yeah, I went to Indianapolis last week. Try and get out there as much as possible, see the progress. The facility that we're building there, the new headquarters, is I think is really it's going to be spectacular. I genuinely can't wait to show it to you. I think it's just kind of not it's not just spectacular from a Formula One point of view, but I think it'll create an anchor point or a touch point for Formula One in America as well. In Indianapolis, which most race fans are aware of, and it just to show that investment there and a tangible presence. And it's not just a kind of a minor little building or whatever. The headquarters has some presence, and really excited for everyone to see it. And it's great to be able to go out periodically and see the progress.
So the goal is to have that as the team's base in the future. At the moment, for our listeners, and we was up there last week, as you know, you've got six or seven buildings
Yeah, it changes every day, I think.
You've got 6 or 7 buildings across the road from Silverstone, but the idea is to eventually move that production hub. So everything is designed and built in the US, which is a real unusual scenario, isn't it? I mean, you'll have to start that recruitment process again, I guess, unless everyone moves over to the US.
No, it's ongoing. And so the bulk of the recruitment's been in the UK up to now, but we're really starting that massive growth spurt in the US now. And when you're quite right, we're in, I don't know how many buildings here in Silverstone, because it does change every week. And we even have
they're
to
all
build
identical, Graeme, as well. I think I'd be lost if I was working there. They're all the same colour, and we'll
send you a map. We'll send you a map, Ben. When the music stops, we'll move out of some of the more temporary ones, and what we'll have in Silverstone is a technical centre with some design and aero and we'll have a production centre, but primarily production for the wind tunnel. So the production facilities that you will have seen here last week are used primarily for the wind tunnel model. We use a wind tunnel in Cologne in Germany. So it makes sense to do that. The vast majority of production for the Mach 26 is outsourced into the supply chain, and so that's the area where there'll be a big change when the Indianapolis headquarters comes on board. It'll be a full size car production facilities over there. We can still do some. We still can and do actually some production here. When we need things rapidly, we can do some metallics and some composites, and we have that, and that gives us huge flexibility as well. So the good news for everyone is there's no need for people to move jobs. The jobs will all stay where they are, but instead we're going to create a whole pile of new jobs in Indianapolis. So that we bring stuff in house, which most of the big teams have, because the competition's not just designing the best shaped components, if you like, but getting them from an idea to the track as quickly as possible. If you can do that, if you can produce something in 6 weeks instead of 8, or in 2 weeks instead of 4, that's performance. And you can accelerate faster than anyone else. So that's what we're working towards.
Because you've got to have all that infrastructure in place, isn't it? That's the benefit of Motorsport Valley in the UK, because you can get your components from the person that produces the ball bearings down the road, and etc. That's a crude way of looking at it, but of course you've got to replicate that in the US and find your suppliers out there. It's going to be a whole building out process. So it's not just your staff; it's all the infrastructure that support the development and build of that team.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right, and you're correct. And it is breaking the mold a little bit, but the US sent a rocket to the moon the other week, so I'm pretty sure we can find the ball bearings. Is kind of that's kind of the approach that we're taking, and we just want to work with really, really, really good people. We want to hire the best people we can. It's my job to try and build the best race team in the world. It takes a long time to do that, but the best way to do that is for our team to be known as the team that everybody wants to join, and everyone's proud to be in, and nobody wants to leave. And and we can work on that on both sides of the Atlantic, and really try and build something special. Yes, it's a little bit different in the way it's structured, but we want to turn those differences into an advantage, and certainly not a disadvantage. Formula One is so competitive; it's no place for doing. There's no place for kind of just trying out ideas or whatever. You've got to, you've just got to be on it. And so it's not easy what we're doing by any stretch, but it's I really like the approach of how we're trying to go about it, I guess.
Building that race team you mentioned there, Graeme, I know a lot's been said about Valtteri and Sergio, but in terms of what we've seen in those first Grand Prix, and you mentioned the upgrade package coming for Miami, how involved have they been? How impressed have you been to work with them at close quarters?
That's been great. It was no secret that anyone seeing the announcements about Valtteri and Checo could see that we went for experience, not just on track, but the fact that both of them had been to multiple teams. I think 7 or 8 between them, and that was really important because we as a team have to grow at a certain pace. It would be enormously arrogant of us to kind of say, well, we're going to come into F1 and blow everyone away and all that kind of stuff. The sport is too difficult. It's just too difficult to do that. So we needed drivers who can not only contribute to the development of the car from day one, but also could contribute to the gelling together of the engineers and the mechanics, and also can push us, because we need that. You need that competitive edge. It's that old idea of, surround yourself with the very best people, not lookalikes, the very best people you can, and they'll often challenge you, because you want that diversity, and it's important that the drivers do challenge, but these guys are experienced enough not to push too hard at the wrong time. They know how to push to the limit at the right time, both on the track and in how we're trying to grow the structure. And that's really, really important, because you can destroy a team very, very easily if you get that dynamic wrong. And I have to say that both Valtteri and Checo are doing a terrific job on that front, and they're excited as well. They're it's management's job to provide energy into an organization, but drivers have a role to play in that as well, and the best way they can do that is displaying enthusiasm for the task in hand, and these guys know how to do that, and it's really important.
I mean, they're big characters in the US as well, aren't they? I mean, Checo's got that big following, and Valtteri's got it everywhere as well, hasn't he? He's one of the colourful characters, and you can lean into those personalities.
You can, and multi-millions of Mexicans can't be wrong, kind of thing. Just everywhere we go, it's he's got such an enormous following. And also, Valtteri's very approachable, and there's a huge love for Valtteri in the US. He understands the culture there. Same in Australia as well. These are smart guys, understand what they're doing on the track, understand also that the team needs them to do more than just drive race cars, but they still have the time and the capacity to engage with fans, and they're very engaging, and they're very different, both really different characters, and we're super lucky because we kind of get the best of both worlds. We get that that real engagement through totally different characteristics, and it's great for the team as well. It's definitely helped boost the growth rate of our fan base for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it is that American fan base, isn't it? It's all shaping up to be a team for the country, almost, isn't it? If you talk about that route, those roots, obviously strong roots in Indiana, in Indianapolis, and it's all shaping that way. And that's why this race is so pivotal, isn't it? The 3 American races, but this is your first one over there, and it's kind of setting the benchmark, and trying to attract those fans.
Yeah. So no pressure. It's
what did Mario say? Don't muck it up.
Don't let me down.
Don't let him down. That's it. There we go. Yeah.
No, you're quite right. And the good thing is that Formula One fans, and this is where I take my hat off to you guys in the media, is the Formula One fans are incredibly well informed, and they engage in a lot of debate, and they're interested in the sport. And I think that helps because the fans then realize just how difficult it is. It's immensely difficult. And so, they'll realize that a small victory for us as a team at the minute doesn't necessarily mean winning the Well, if we won the race, it would be a massive victory. Don't get me
Wouldn't
wrong,
it
but
just?
yeah, there'd be a proper party. But what's great is that we're engaging with fans who understand the journey that we're on. They're joining us on that journey as well. They're enjoying it's going, and important for us is to constantly show them a positive trajectory. We want to be finishing races. You can see how difficult it is. Some teams have struggled to start them, let alone finish them. That's how difficult Formula One is. And that's not being negative in any way against the other teams. Far from it. It's a sign of respect that that anyone doing this game is they're operating at the highest level of any kind of competition. But I think it's the fans understand that. We just need to keep showing them that we're moving forward, and a positive story on the track and off the track as well. We're trying to do a lot of fan friendly things. We've got some huge plans in Miami to really involve fans as well. There's a big kind of fan takeover at Jungle Plaza in Miami. So there's lots and lots going on, and hopefully we're kind of welcoming the fans to the journey. As I said before, I'm super lucky. I get front row seat. I get to see the whole thing. But I do have to get up early and go to bed late.
We know in Miami there will be tweaked regulations after the meetings during this break. Could you just tell us why those changes were needed and what difference those fans can expect to see when we go racing in Miami?
What we're seeing so far from feedback from Formula One in particular is that there's been a really positive reaction to the racing so far this year from the fans. So I think what the fans will see, or hopefully what they'll see in Miami, is a continuation of that, because I think a lot of people were a little bit concerned that the racing would either there wouldn't be any and it'd be too processional, or perhaps it'd be too contrived. And far from that, the fan reaction from what we've seen and feedback that we've had from Formula One has been really, really positive. So I'd hope that they will continue to see that in Miami, but perhaps some of the areas where there could have been some problems and kind of overly penalising a team either through a DNF or God forbid an accident or something like that. Hopefully that's been mitigated in some way. So it's just kind of, I'd like to think that the changes will be all positive. I have to say Formula One is so complicated now from a technical point of view.
You can say that again, yeah.
That the reality isn't, we need to kind of see it all on track. But I think the very fact that all the teams, all the power unit manufacturers, FIA and FOM all got together to make these changes shows that everybody's awake to this and alert to the fact that if we need to tweak and change a few things for the right reasons, then everybody's open to that. And I think that's really important. If people had been digging the heels in or something, then it would have made it difficult.
I was just going to ask just quickly, what's the meeting like? Like, can you give us a little bit of colour? And do you feel different being and working for Cadillac than it was? Do you get a different reception from your fellow team principals working for Cadillac than what you did when you was at Manor, say?
It is different. I won't go into any detail of the meetings because out of respect of the process and the meeting itself. But it's a really, really interesting question because I remember the first F1 Commission meeting as a Cadillac person, a representative. I went along and I suddenly thought, I've probably been in more of these than nearly everyone in the room, apart from Toto. Because I spent whatever it was 5 or 6 years doing these meetings, and the current duration of some team principals seems to be significantly shorter. But they were very different from the ones I was in previously. The last my last stint in the F1 Commission, I was a team owner. I owned a part of the team. I didn't own all of it. And things have changed a bit from those times. The decision making loops are probably slightly different. But there's a lot of very experienced people in the room during those meetings. It's funny because you kind of remember, when you think back, you remember the stuff that really sticks in your mind. And trust me, in those days where Bernie was in there and a lot of colourful characters from all sorts of various teams, some of the things that stick in my mind were just epic. I mean, you couldn't make it up. But you probably can't write it down either.
I was going to say.
But equally, I'm the first to say, you kind of mind plays tricks with you, because it wouldn't be like that every week. There's still big chunks of what we have to do, which is quite process driven, and on stuff like that, you just have to do your homework. You just have to do an awful lot of reading now, because there does seem to be a lot more regulations now,
Yes.
and you have to be across all of them. So that's changed a bit. But yeah, and I don't know, some of the people in the room weren't in Formula One the last time I was sat in the F1 Commission. So they're probably thinking, who's he? But no, I'm joking a bit, because I've worked with most of them and I know most of them, and on a personal level, there's some friendships, to a greater or lesser extent, in the room as well. And so it's nice. For me, it was nice to be back, for sure.
Graeme, you mentioned just quickly that you mentioned the technical regulations these days, and I hate to think how thick that book must be. But for Ben's benefit, could you just maybe give us the top and tail of what these changes actually are that were agreed?
Not a chance. It is. I'm not saying that because it's secret. I'm saying it because I don't know how long your podcast is, but it would have to be a marathon epic. And again, that's not a criticism either. The easiest way to distill it down is probably there are some changes to do with qualifying. There's some changes to do with the start of the race, and there's some changes to do with the race itself.
Perfect.
And then as soon as exactly. And as soon as you get beyond that, you get into the level of detail about super clipping and Leica and harvesting and energy curves and stuff that that are super difficult for. I've got an engineering degree, and I would bore you silly trying to explain them.
Didn't have that in 2009, did you?
I had the engineering degree, but we didn't have all the regulations. That's for sure. Well, it was very, very different then, and that is one thing that has changed a lot. But I do find it interesting. But that said, Formula One is. I love the sport. I love it, and I think it has a core and an essence that should always be there. And the technology is important, and the size of the challenge is important. But it's sport, and sport has heroes. The drivers are quite rightly heroes. It is the greatest team game in the world. We have like 1,000 players on each team, and getting them in the right place on the pitch at the right time, and everything is sort of my job. And I think we always have to remember that people ultimately need to see exciting racing, and that's what makes us keep coming back. That's what the fans want to see, and and hopefully they're getting it as well. But so long as we're focused on that, and yes, the technology is important, but ultimately it's it's the thrill of the competition. That's the essence, I think, that people love.
Graeme, thanks ever so much. We want to do one question with you, though, which Mark will ask you, if that's possible.
All right.
We didn't brief you on this because we wanted to get your reaction as it was.
All right.
It's a really difficult one as well, so it might catch you out. But we know you're backwards and forwards from America now. We're heading to Miami for the next Grand Prix. So basically, all we need to know is, what is your go-to American food?
Oh, that is a very good question. And here's a problem that I've got at the minute, because most of the stuff that I love in America, it turns out, is not necessarily good for you if you eat stacks of it. And I've taken on the role of well-being. It's got a name, and I will remember it, but it's something like well-being guru at our team, because I'm one of the older chaps here. I'm supposed to give some advice and encouragement to everyone on our team down the lines of, if I can do it, you can do it. So a massive problem I've got here is, if I list off to you the many things that I really like eating in the US, I am on a hiding to nothing. Too many to mention. I'm still yet to find chocolate. I think other countries might have. Maybe that's just a taste bud thing.
Yeah.
And trust me, I've been sampling as much as I possibly can. I haven't found a winner in that department yet, but they just seem to have a lot of Moorish stuff, and that's my weakness. So I probably haven't answered the question succinctly, but I've given you my excuse in true F1 Commission style.
Brilliant stuff. Anything similar to Nuki Brown yet, or nothing like that over there?
No, well, there can never be anything. There can never be anything quite the same. But if you insist, I will go and sample, and I'll give him a feedback the next time we talk.
Perfect.
In moderation.
Thank you very much indeed, Graeme. That was absolutely awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for your time, Graeme. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Mark. No, appreciate it. And it's, great to have the opportunity to talk to you.
Right. Well, thank you to Graeme. That went over because, quite frankly, he was brilliant and very open with us and honest. And I think there's just a lot to talk about. I think for me, one of my big takeaways was just how excited he is by this project. It has been an incredibly long couple of years for him. As I said at the start, he was involved long before it was even a confirmed entrant into the team. But he doesn't seem to have lost any of his enthusiasm, does he, Mark?
No, not at all. It's worth obviously sending him a happy birthday from us guys, because obviously you mentioned it on the call that he's had that come up during the time running into Miami. But the enthusiasm is definitely still there. The way he spoke about it, the way he almost has that jovial approach to talking about how that he wasn't really doing much. He was, had fingers in pies in terms of buying and selling teams and helping people do that. But I imagine he is absolutely delighted to be very much at the forefront of a whole new team entering the grid again. But one this time that you feel is properly backed and is building for the future and has the team in place. It's almost, with all due respect to those previous times he's been in that position, this is almost like the chance he's been waiting for, you imagine, to come in and do it properly.
Yeah. But not wanting to sound like his PR man though, Ben. I mean, Cadillac have got pretty lucky to get Graeme Lowdon, haven't they? Because he mentioned it in the pod there. He has a very unique skill set. Not many people have it. He's worked for startup teams before. This is obviously a bit different, but actually he's pretty much the perfect guy for Cadillac.
Yeah, why is Mark laughing at that?
Because it just made me think of Liam Neeson. Is it Taken? Where it's like, I've got a very particular unique set of skills or whatever. Yeah.
Wow, that's some segue, but yeah.
Wow. I'm sure Graeme Lowdon will love the comparison with Liam
Neeson. Yes, they are lucky. A steady hand on the tiller, understands how it all works, very well connected. Without his level of expertise, there's no doubt in my mind that they wouldn't have been on the grid at that first race in Australia, let alone, having one car finish it. So I think that they do owe him a bit of a debt, but he is the right man. I can see why they picked him. For me, there's lots of takeaways. The stopping and appreciating just how far they've come. I thought that was really, really interesting because there isn't really much time for patting on the back. They haven't really achieved anything yet in their mind. And I think it sometimes takes people from outside the organisation just to reinforce that message of just how far they've come. And yeah, I think for me as well, every time I listen to Graeme talk about the project, you can't help but get enthused by it. And I think that is the element which needs to come across, in Miami, in terms of building that fan base, because what Cadillac will be doing is looking to tap into that area in perhaps a way that Haas haven't managed to do so far. Haas, an American-owned team, but based in the UK, but there does feel a little bit of a disconnect between the US fans, whereas I think that Cadillac, by having that foothold and a big one in Indianapolis, will allow them to attract plenty of home support. And I'm really excited just to see how that develops over the coming years and sort of building a fan base. It could be America's F1 team. I think that, for me, is the most exciting part of the project.
Mark, you and I are going to be in Miami. I think we're going to have to get ourselves down to Jungle Plaza, aren't we?
Absolutely. I mean, Ben's absolutely spot on as well there, isn't it? But I think the thing I take away from it all, and we mentioned it on the last pod with the other guys, is yes, this could be this American team flying the American flag almost literally in Formula One, 3 races a year, growing audience there all the time. Yet they owe a lot of it to a 61-year-old man from Northumberland. It's an amazing story for Graeme, just to loop it back to him. And it'll be interesting to see the progression over the rest of the season. I think Ben's right. They, 5 finishes in 6 races is a great place to start. Where do they end the year? What for them would be that progression over that year? Does the target become points? Is it just reliability and continued reliability at this point? And they will know those answers without telling us. But Beck, I also think it's worth touching on his role as nutritional expert for the entirety of Formula One.
Mm.
I don't know what I'd have thought
the answer I was expecting.
when we rocked up with our M&S pre-packed sandwiches and things like that. I don't think he'd have been too pleased. So maybe it was good that he was on a call with us. But yeah, that I guess is telling, isn't it, that he's involved with that side of it, and it seems like quite a fun thing to do. So the team they're putting in place there really is one they appear to be setting up to do things the right way for the right reasons.
I mean, it is elite sport, I suppose. Everyone who's working within that team needs to be at their best, so it makes sense. But yeah, I wasn't expecting Graeme Lowdon to be the wellness guru of Cadillac F1. There you go, nice little exclusive for us. Right, thank you very much to Graeme and to Cadillac as well for letting us into their factory at Silverstone, and also for letting us speak to the 3 men who have been put in charge of turning that team around and getting it onto the grid. A very, very impressive feat as they head into their first home race, and we will all be watching them as they appear in America and see how the fans take to them as well. We will be back for the 3rd and final instalment of this Cadillac special, and that will be out tomorrow, depending when you're listening to this. It might be available right now. But if you have enjoyed listening to this podcast, please do rate and review us. Please do get in touch with us. We love hearing from you. Any questions, any feedback. It really does mean a lot to us. But until next time, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.